Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Martinek. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the Center for Sustainable Business. The Center for Sustainable Business is happy to put on this event in collaboration with the University Honors College, 3R Sustainability, and the Office of Pitt Serves as part of Pitt Civic Action Week. I will now hand over the floor to Professor Bhattacharya for his presentation on sustaining sustainability during COVID-19. Professor Bhattacharya.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alyssa, and a very warm welcome to all of you for coming this afternoon and joining us. I'm a professor. I'm the Zoffer Chair of Sustainability and Ethics at the Katz Graduate School of Business and Pitt Business, and also served as the director of the Center for Sustainable Business, where Alyssa works as the Sustainability Coordinator. So it is my great pleasure to be with you for the next half hour or so. And I'm going to be essentially sharing my screen and, getting started here in a second. So, right. So sustaining sustainability during COVID-19, I mean, this is extremely important, and more so because of what I have learned about sustainability in the last several years that I have been working on the subject. And sustainability is really defined as kind of the well-being of our planet and people. So a very simple idea that if our planet is not healthy, and if the people on our planet are not healthy, then we really cannot do a whole lot of productive things. And this is all fine and good, and this would have been all fine and good, except that through my research, I find and continue to find that sustainability is regarded as someone else's problem by most people I encounter. So managers, students, households, anybody. It's like, yeah, well, the planet is important, and society is important, but I really don't have time for this because I have more important things to do. So it's someone else's problem. It's always someone else's problem. So if you talk to small companies, they will tell you that, well, it's the big company's problem and the other ones with the bigger footprints. If you talk to the big companies, they will say it's the government's problem. Well, they should be instituting more regulations, then they would follow those. And if you talk to the government, they will say, well, it's not us, it's really the other country's problem. And you should be talking to them. I mean, this is exactly what is going on, for example, in the United States as of this point of time. We are trying to kind of outsource our sense of responsibility to other countries in the world. But if that's, I mean, let's take a look at the problems that we are facing currently, right? I mean, so in the 21st century, and all of you are going to be kind of, be productive individuals in the 21st century. And what is the kind of world that we are going to be leaving for all of you? First off, climate change. I mean, it has happened. It is not something in the future. It is happening in front of our eyes. We are seeing the fires, we are seeing the floods, we're seeing the hurricanes, right? Plastics in the ocean, very, very connected to climate change again. I mean, and kind of, spoiling our oceans, spoiling our biodiversity, all of that. Water is a precious resource, as you know. We need water to survive, and yet there are cities that are running out of water, and there is no saying as to when these water wars are going to start between communities and across countries and so on. Inequality. So this is something that we've heard quite a bit of during COVID, that there's a very interesting phrase that we all face the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat. That's a very, very telling phrase. We're all facing the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. after COVID started, I think the United States has had like 14 more billionaires or something, billionaires. I mean, and people like Jeff Bezos have increased their wealth to some incredible, unthinkable amounts, whereas the lower half of the population does not even have 1% of the wealth to kind of go around across all of them. 40% of American households do not have $400 to spare as an exigency, as if some kind of emergency comes up. Now, these are very, very sobering and telling statistics, right? Think about this: 1 in 5 people globally do not have access to electricity. What are we going to do? I mean, these people, don't they deserve their children to kind of send to school and to learn and to educate, to watch TV occasionally? It's a bad situation. Indoor pollution. Now, this is actually a big problem. And mostly because of charcoal fires and such, millions are dying from indoor pollution. 65 million girls across the world are out of school. I mean, what kind of an example are we setting to our fellow human beings that, whilst we have the fanciest gadgets, for us to work with and so on, then there this big number who are not able to earn proper livelihoods and live with dignity because of this condition. And finally, in the face of all of this, I had this chart from before, but in the face of all of this, there is this new monster called COVID that comes and hits us out of absolutely nowhere, right? And how do we suddenly, so these were the sustainability challenges that we already had. And now, on top of that, there is this other challenge that's kind of creating havoc, death and destruction, job losses, everything that comes with it, kind of economic shrinkage, all of it kind of, to compound the problems kind of that we already have. So the question is, how do we sustain the sustainability imperative, the sustainability challenges that we were already facing? How do we sustain momentum in the face of something like this? Now, let's take a look at what COVID has actually revealed to us. What has it revealed to us? 3 key things, right? In terms of what I call the triple bottom line. So the first thing to note is that if we want the sustainability challenges to continue to have momentum, if we want to persist, to be sustainable as a planet, as a people, we need to transition from the singular focus on profit, this obsession with profit, making money that we have in this society, to what I call the triple bottom line, which is 3 Ps: planet, people, profit. So we have to go to this nexus, this intersection of these 3 critical elements. And COVID actually revealed to us some very, very interesting aspects of this triple bottom line. So the first thing we learned was that there were these blue skies from Los Angeles to Beijing, kind of, that were suddenly seen when the earth came to a standstill, when the world came to a standstill, the lockdowns were happening. What do those blue skies mean? They mean 2 things. One is that kind of, that the climate change, or the fog that we see, or the smog that we see, this is basically mostly a result of human activity, which is what we've been arguing for years. And then there's still some naysayers. The second thing that we observe is that it's actually reversible. So if we cut back on our human activity, it can be reversed, where that's what the blue skies are actually showing. So maybe the current amount of human activity that we have is absurdly high. And you will know that because I can give you another telling statistic that today, as a humanity, we are consuming 1.5 planets worth of resources. So we are actually consuming, borrowing from the future to kind of fuel the present level of activity that we have. And if this level of activity goes unchecked, then by 2050, we will be consuming 3 planets worth of resources. Now, what do I mean by resources? Air, water, minerals, these are all resources. And the Earth has a fixed capacity to replenish those resources. It's not infinite, right? So that's one thing that we learn, is that we have to cut back on the level of kind of consumption that we have in the world, in the Western part of the world, for sure, to a reasonable level. And we have to channel our energy into directions like education, into directions like electricity generation for all, to address the challenges that I showed you. Not so much kind of in terms of, okay, what's the next iPhone with a slightly better camera that I can get. I mean, that's really old-fashioned thinking. The second thing that COVID revealed to us was in the realm of people, that all people clearly are not equal. Even in harm's way, all people are not equal. So we face huge job losses, and people who had those job losses, I mean, in the United States, we are talking about stimulus money, helping those who have lost their jobs, etc. Think about what the situation is in Africa or in countries like Bangladesh, I mean, which lost a huge amount of garment orders. So Bangladesh is one of the biggest garment factories of the world, because all your Gap and H&M and Zara, they source from there. And they immediately cut off their orders, saying that, there's no demand right now, so we can't have production. Not only that, many of these companies did not honor the orders that they had already placed. And these people who were making the clothes just went, begging, and that we don't even know the human count kind of not only the job loss, but of starvation and everything. So the frontline workers, the migrant workers, so our society is not inclusive, and we really need to change that. We really need to change that. And the third thing we observed, which is very, very important, is that, we need profit. We need profit. We're not anti-profit. We need profit to make the world go round, because what we're observing now in that realm is, look, it's just that the rich are getting richer in the time of COVID. We see that, like I told you, 14 more billionaires, lots and lots of wealth created at the upper echelons of society. But on the other hand, 40% of small businesses are going to close as a result of this pandemic. New York City will not look the same again. If you're reading the newspapers, you know this. So the question is kind of, how do we take this data, this revolution, and how do we transition from the single bottom line to the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit? And this is the work that I have been doing for the last 5 years or so. And most of my learnings is documented in this book, Small Actions, Big Difference. And you can certainly kind of, if you're interested in this topic, please take a look at this book. But what I'm going to do in the remaining time that I have is to give you a flavor of what this book is about and the most important parts. So what I tried to do in this book is I tried to offer a concept that I think we all need in this world at this point, and that is called this idea of sustainability ownership. The idea that all of us need to take ownership of our planet, need to take ownership of our society, and need to engage in civic action, in action in our companies when we work there, action of whatever kind, on the domestic front, everything that we can to do, but not to say that this is someone else's problem. So there are maybe 30 of you here on the other side listening to this talk, but I promise you that there are 300,000 who are thinking that it's someone else's problem. And the 30 of you who are here because you actually care. So it is your job to try and instill this sense of sustainability ownership amongst your friends and colleagues and everybody you know. Now, what is this sense of sustainability ownership? So In the literature, we say that there's this idea that ownership can be psychological. You don't have to only own a car or an apartment or your books or whatever. It can also refer to the connection that you feel towards an appealing object, such as a person. You can have a sense of ownership towards the company that you work for. You can have a sense of ownership towards even an idea like sustainability, I take ownership of sustainability and I actually do something about it. Ownership is a powerful idea because it is part of the human condition. And Jean-Paul Sartre, who was a famous philosopher, as you all know, he said something to the effect of, we are what we have. So in other words, again, ownership is something that says something about who the person is, and the things that person owns, or even the ideas that the person owns. And it is in that vein that I make the third point, which is kind of ownership is an extension of the self. It's part of who we are, what we own. And a simple example, like, people, when they have their house, they put their own touch into the house, their artifacts, the color of the paint, the pictures they put up, everything. It becomes something that they take pride in. So in the company sphere, what I saw, I studied, more than 25 global multinational companies, the likes of IBM and Siemens and BASF and McDonald's and Unilever and many Nestle, many companies, all listed in the book. And the idea is that kind of I went from head offices to factories to learn about kind of what are companies doing to embed sustainability. And what I found is that there are only a handful of companies who have this sense of sustainability ownership, where employees themselves pick up the baton and do their part. Whether they're in the mailroom or whether they're in the boardroom, it doesn't matter. Sustainability is everybody's job, no exceptions. So one of the companies that I observed with an ethos or a culture like that is this company called Unilever. So this PG Tips that you see on your screen is a brand of tea. And it was in one of the UK factories that this tea was being made. And, a worker came up with this idea that, hey, we can maybe snip off 3 millimeters from this tea package. It's a packaged tea, right? You open up the paper package and you bring out the tea. So maybe we can snip off 3 millimeters from this packaged tea and nothing would be disrupted, kind of everything would still be okay. And they did that. And then over time, that saves like reels and reels of paper, tons and tons of paper, because you got to multiply that by scale, right? Small actions, big difference. And paper is a precious resource on the one hand, and it also costs money. So the company is not only kind of reducing its costs and therefore adding to its profits, it's also saving a precious resource and therefore driving kind of societal value, right? So so the question is, how do we make every company like an Unilever or every household where everybody, all the members of the household take responsibility for their actions, and how do we make our university where everybody takes action on sustainability and takes ownership of sustainability? So, I will skip this slide perhaps, but essentially what this slide says is that there are some fundamental motivations that drive people to own an object or an idea. And sustainability is a prime candidate for ownership. That's what I'm arguing in this slide, because it offers us the chance to contribute to meaningful solutions. Everybody can do something. Like this person came up with the idea of cutting out 3 millimeters from there. You can start by putting off the lights, by turning off the tap when you brush your teeth. I know many people still don't do that, and it blows my mind. By not printing, there are lots of things you can do. And believe you me, no action is small enough to make a difference. Every action makes a difference. So it's this idea of efficacy, because we all want to, affect our environments, and we all can do sustainable things in our lives. It gives us identity. I said that already. And so in the work sphere, it's the opportunity to express personal values and identity at work. Like, today people want to kind of work for a company. All of you, I'm sure, particularly the millennials, and the Gen Zs, they want to work for a company that has this kinds of values, that works on sustainability issues, and do not want to work for old school companies that don't care about the environment, right? So it's a very powerful hook, again, sustainability ownership. And finally, we all crave this sense of belonging. So we all want to belong to something bigger than ourselves. We are all excited by the idea of working for a cause that's bigger than ourselves. And certainly our planet, our society, these are things that are bigger than ourselves. And here, anybody who has an opportunity to serve will say, well, at least I am doing something about this issue. I'm doing something about my children. And you can say, well, we're doing something to make our generation more sustainable kind of down the road. That's why I argue that ownership is a very, very powerful concept in this context. So what are the key elements? And I'm not going to take you through the entire model, which is laid out in the book, but the key elements, the first thing is to define the purpose of a company. Why do we do what we do? Why do we do what we do, right? This is not about making more money, because if the answer to this question is we are doing this to maximize shareholder value, then you're living in the past. You may believe even today, and I would really like to hear from you as to how many of you believe that the purpose of a company is to make as much money as possible. This is our naive belief, but really the purpose of a company is to empower human beings to do what they want in whatever sphere it is, right? So Enel is a very, very large electricity company based out of Italy. And Enel made the very, very bold move to shut down all their coal-fired plants and transition to renewable energy, right? This is a big move for a company where there are engineers who've been working in these coal-fired plants for like 40 years or something. But I talked to their CEO, and there's an interesting story about that, which I can't go into right now. But the CEO said, I went to those individuals who had been here for 40 years, and I said, think of this as a rebirth. Don't think of this as a funeral. Think about this as a rebirth. Because that's the purpose of an electricity company, is to enable people to do what they want to do with electricity, right? The purpose of an electricity company is not to sell as much electricity as possible. The purpose of a car company is to provide mobility. The purpose of a car company is not to sell as many cars as possible. So we all need to take a step back and say why are we doing this, right? Are we trying to sell as much food, or are we trying to provide nourishment? And believe you me, every company can have a purpose. Every individual can have a purpose. So each of you can ask yourself, what am I dedicating my life to? What is it that I really want to tell my children I have been up to doing, right? And inspired epiphanies. So epiphanies are those moments where you really get a signal that, hey, maybe I've been going down the wrong track, making money, that's not really inspiring for me, but helping a fellow human being, that's more inspiring. The second thing you have to do is you have to define what's material for your company, for your university, for your college, whatever your sphere of influence is, right? So everybody does not have to run after reducing carbon footprint. It could be that in Pittsburgh, the main challenge we have is inequality between the haves and the have-nots, and there are people who are going hungry, and and that's the most material thing that we can think of, and that's job one for us. So we have to figure out what are the priorities that we have, and run after those priorities rather than thinking, oh, I'm here to solve all the problems of the world. Because if we don't focus, then at the end of the day, we don't do anything. The second thing is, once I've incubated my plan, I'm going to launch this plan to my stakeholders. And in this context, I've been studying companies, but the stakeholders could be students very much in a university setting. And imagine I try to get this idea of ownership to all the students in the university. What do? I mean, first I try to entice you, right? I try to kind of motivate you to come and join the sustainability, to jump aboard the good ship sustainability. And two appeals really work there. One is the appeal to the heart. Say, hey, this is the right thing to do. Look at climate change and all of that. What are the next generation going to do? We have to work now. So that's an appeal to the heart. You can also appeal to the head. You know, if we save carbon, if we save electricity, we save carbon, and that's not a precious resource, but that's something good if we can lower our carbon footprint. And if we save electricity, we save money. So that's an appeal to the head, right? So we got to mix appeals to the head with the appeals to the heart. And most of the time it's the hybrid appeals that works the best. But creating motivation is not enough. I also have to create ability, because everything is not just about putting off lights and printing two-sided and so on. So in a company, there's a lot of scientific work to be done on sustainability. In a university as well, kind of, we need management systems. How do we kind of train our individuals to procure sustainably? Like, how do we make buying decisions sustainably? And we need systems so that people don't have to think about this each time they do something. It's easy. So the costs of acting sustainably are lowered. And we also have to increase the benefits of acting sustainably. So I've been arguing that maybe we should have a course where if you do something in the sustainability realm and we can monitor that, then you can get course credit for doing these kinds of things, and that then we can all engage together, and there's everybody, then it can be everybody's job, because that's really important. That's the whole essence of ownership, is to make it everybody's job. At Unilever, the company I mentioned earlier, it is indeed everybody's job, and they have kind of a motto that if there is one exception, then everybody thinks they're the exception. So there are no exceptions in the company, right? And there are other companies like that as well. And finally, we have to routinize it. To entrench means to routinize. So what do we need to do? We need to create a culture. And we can very much create this in our university as well, right? So we can communicate progress, kind of how well are we doing? We know we have a goal of 2037 to go carbon neutral, but how well are we doing in that front? That's very, very key. If everybody knows that we are making good progress, we're inspired to work harder. We can co-create solutions. We can create idea contests and such. I mean, and I think you're going to work on a workshop later on today where you're going to be asked to co-create something. Let's do something together to make a difference. And that's very, very inspiring to people. And finally, we must celebrate our successes and our failures. I mean, there are companies that also talk about failures. Here I give an example of a company called Marks and Spencer's, who say like, okay, there is no planet B, so our plan is called Plan A. And they have these kind of parties, Oscar-style red carpet parties, where they call out people and who go the extra mile in sustainability and kind of reward them in front of lots and lots of their colleagues and so on. So just creating that culture that sustainability matters to us and to this campus and so on. And finally, it's about collaboration. So this is also a part of expanding this idea of ownership. It's not just my company, or my university, but it's our planet. So we can team up with Chatham and Duquesne and Carnegie Mellon and so on, and jointly fight this good fight. We have to put sustainability in the pre-competitive space. And the example I was trying to give here is something about palm oil. Everything we eat, a lot of things we eat have palm oil in them, chocolate in particular. So, and palm oil creates something called deforestation, whereby trees are being cut down to grow this palm oil. And so there are major companies who come together to create consortia that prevent this deforestation that's being created from palm oil, so that you have certified sustainable palm oil and so on and so forth. But the point is that collaboration is really a very, very important thing to do at this point. So this is more applicable to me than to all of you at this point. So I really, when I talk to my colleagues, it's like we don't inherit the earth from our parents, we borrow it from our children. So I borrowed it literally my generation has borrowed it from your generation and we've screwed it up. So I hope that you guys don't do the same and you do whatever you can in your sphere of influence. And we are here to help. So I've also written articles on this. If you want to take a look, all of these can be made available to you. And particularly kind of, we have these, we have this center, the Center for Sustainable Business. Alyssa, who introduced the session, works there, and we are always looking for people who want to come and help us, so do lend a hand. So seek us out, write to us, and we would be very happy to engage with you. We have a podcast which has exactly this title of sustainability during the pandemic. And we have like 14 episodes, I think, to date. You can look at all the episodes, listen to rather, all the episodes on our website, which is part of the center's website, sustainablebusiness.pitt.edu. So we are doing a lot, but we kind of extend our hands in partnership to all of you. And we want to work together to create a world that is more sustainable and that is more just compared to the world we have now. So that is the 30 minutes I had, and I hope I did not go very much over time. If you have questions, I know we don't have any time right now, but you can easily channel them to me through Alyssa, or write to me directly at cb@pitt.edu. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or wherever it is, if you feel like keeping in touch. But thank you for joining, and have a nice afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We will now be entering the workshop portion of this event. Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. Again, if you would like to contact Professor Bhattacharya or myself, I will be linking our website during the workshop portion of this event, where you can find all of our contact information. At this point, I would like to introduce Jana Lake, who is the CEO and founder of 3R Sustainability, a woman-owned CSR consulting firm right here in Pittsburgh. At this point, everybody can go ahead and turn their screens back on, and I am going to go ahead and share my screen and pass the floor over to Jana. Can everyone see my screen?